Welcome once again. This is a continuation of an unconference that we held in 2023, tagged EdCon 2023. It was funded by the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK, and we're trying to see how we can facilitate the development and design of homegrown solutions to Africa's educational problems. So before we start, I think I would like to introduce our guests. Mr. Sylvester Macaulay is the country director of Mamie Foundation in Sierra Leone, a non-profit established in 2020 to preserve the legacy of Mamie Kamara, whose life exemplified hard work, compassion, and community service. With over 29 years of experience in development management, project leadership, and business administration, he leads programs focused on child education, youth employment, women's empowerment, and gender-based violence prevention. Mamie Foundation is also a social enterprise as a strategy of sustainability. Under Mr. Sylvester Macaulay's leadership, Mamie Foundation works with communities, government institutions, and development partners to create sustainable opportunities and drive locally led solutions that improve lives across Sierra Leone. Welcome, Mr. Sylvester Darlington Macaulay. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thank you. So our next guest is the esteemed and distinguished Mommy Titi. Thank you for joining us. Mrs. Titilola Akintayo. She is a highly accomplished education professional with over 45 years of experience in the education industry. Throughout her distinguished career, she has made significant contributions to both the public and private education sectors, demonstrating a deep commitment to academic excellence, curriculum development, and educational leadership. Her extensive experience spans teaching, educational consulting, curriculum design, publishing, and school administration. As a consultant and curriculum developer, she has helped shape learning experiences that have positively impacted students, teachers, and educational institutions. As a publisher and school owner, she has further contributed to the advancement of quality education by creating resources and opportunities that support effective teaching and learning. A woman passionate about lifelong learning and educational innovation, Mrs. Titilola brings a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and practical expertise to every endeavor. Beyond her professional achievements, she's a proud grandma who values family and community. She enjoys reading, exploring new ideas, and spending quiet moments in self-reflection, which continue to inspire her personal growth and professional excellence. Her legacy is one of dedication, service, and a lasting commitment to nurturing minds and shaping future generations. Thank you for joining us, Ma.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, without much further ado, let's dive in. Let's quickly describe what homegrown solutions are. Homegrown solutions, I believe, are designed and developed by Africans, should be designed and developed by Africans for Africans. These are solutions that are designed with our core values in mind. We don't share the same culture and values with Western societies. So why do we believe their ways of education will work for us? Now, I'm not saying we should do away with everything. That's like throwing the baby away with the bathwater. Take what works, but also incorporate our way of life into what we are teaching our young ones. This instills a sense of patriotic pride in everyone who grows up within our culture with the knowledge that our ways are valuable too. Now, on to my first question. When we look at the current educational landscape in our respective regions, that's Nigeria and Sierra Leone in this context, what is the biggest friction point caused by trying to fit a foreign curriculum into an African context?
Well, for me, the biggest friction point is the relevance. The curricula that we use in Africa was developed with some concept behind them based on social, economic, and cultural integration with the Western ideals. Now, this now creates children who just become academically dependent on what they've read, what they've been given, rather than concentrating on what can work within their locality. Okay, so in many classrooms, you see that children, they may spend years learning about Europe and North America. And, they don't know anything about where they come from. In fact, I remember there was a time I was interviewing a young man, and I asked him, can you tell me about Macaulay? And he said, Herbert Macaulay was a white man who came to Africa, who came to Nigeria to lead in the educational reform at that time. I was so saddened by that type of thought. So, everybody tends to want to follow the West, and we leave what we have here, to guessing and, not really understanding what we have. For example, you are talking about, if you ask a child about Silicon Valley, they are so very fast to say Silicon Valley is this. But none of them will remember that we have the Lagos e-learning hub, that hub in Lagos. So you are talking about environment. The first thing they tend to say is snow and all that. Not realizing that we have a waste problem in Nigeria. We have a problem about access to water. And so for me, it's not, like you said, it's not jettisoning what the West they have to offer, but is integrating both so that the children will also understand that we have entrepreneurs, innovators, leaders in Africa, and exposing them to this knowledge, we help in reducing this friction that that is all around the curriculum we use.
I will also say the biggest thing is the relevance. There is a disconnect in terms of relevance. You will see many students, they will spend so many years studying concepts that have little connection to their daily lives or even future economic opportunities. Let us take, for example, in Sierra Leone, you have a significant proportion of population that depends on agriculture, informal trade, fisheries, and small enterprises. But yet, what happened? The educational system often places greater emphasis on things that are theoretical rather than practical application. Students can even explain concepts in textbook, but may struggle to apply them in solving community problems. And this is very, very, very much important. The result, as a matter of all of this, is that there is a mismatch between what students learn and what the economy requires. Many young people graduate with certificates, beautiful certificates, but lack employable skills. This is because we look at education as something just to get your certificate, but forget about the empowerment to become job creators and innovators rather than solely be job seekers, right? So the challenges are many, but again, let us have a look at the foreign curricula, which are entirely wrong in my own perspective, because this curricula conceptualize the non-realities of our culture, economy, and even our developmental aspirations. So it's like there is need to decolonize the mindset about the way we position our educational system in our country.
We discussed something like this during the conference as well. Our major problem in Africa is relevant education. Some people will argue that Nigerian graduates go abroad and they thrive. They do really well. You take a child from Nigeria, you plant the same child in the same class abroad, and they are doing better than their classmates. And that's good and bad in a sense, because we teach them how to thrive in a different society. We are not teaching them how to thrive, how to solve our local problems. So, Mrs. Akintayo, from your experience running Bloomfield in Abuja, how do you successfully adapt standard educational content to reflect local realities, values, and languages without compromising on global quality?
Well, for me, enhancement does not mean dilution. We have a very high standard of academics using localized examples, localized resources to teach what we need to, the concepts that we need the children to understand. Like I said, we use local examples. We invite people, technologists, artisans, we invite them to come and give practical examples of what we can use in our society, in our community. So the question is not asking a child, can you recite what I've told you? The question is, how can you implement this, what the knowledge you've just acquired in your community? So moving to that, the children are able to understand and grasp that, in their community, they have things that can actually work and solve the problems that are inherent in our society. For example, we use hydroponics, creating, using plastic, creating and growing small vegetables in the school. We have a small farm where children actually practice what they need in their community. We discuss about, like I said, waste. How do we solve the waste management problem in Nigeria? And they have even gone ahead to say, okay, can we use biodegradable components to create electricity, to create water, to access water in their community. So I think that, bringing local examples and using localized skilled workers to explain some of these concepts goes a long way in helping us achieve what we need to achieve with the children.
Mr. Darlington, the Mamie Foundation does incredible work on the ground in Sierra Leone. How do we bridge the gap between abstract academic concepts and the everyday socioeconomic realities of young learners in West Africa?
Thank you very much. This is a very good one. Based on our experience working in communities, Mamie Foundation have learned that learning becomes meaningful when it is connected to real life experiences. Let us take, for example, when mathematics is taught in school, you start to think whether whatever you are learning in mathematics will be really applied in your community. But if you teach mathematics through agriculture, through trade, market transactions, your small businesses you are doing, science, you can link them as well to climate change adaptation, sustainable farming, and even renewable energy and community health. If you link mathematics with all of this, I think it becomes part of the people, it becomes part of the community. Let's look at entrepreneurship again. It should be an extracurricular activity, but integrated into mainstream learning, because we know what is happening now in the entire world. Now, we also need to stronger collaborate schools, to link them, businesses, and even civil society organizations. Again, the students should have some regular exchange in practical projects, apprenticeship, community service, and social enterprise initiatives, rather than sitting in the classroom teaching them English, teaching them mathematics, real life things. In Sierra Leone, for example, many young people leave school and immediately confront challenges of unemployment. Why? It's because we don't teach them what they'll be facing in the market. That is why you have issues of poverty and limited opportunities. Now, education, let us consider education as something to equip them with practical skills, rather, to navigate these realities. Learning must move from memorization to problem solving, right? So, I will say again, homegrown approach could be the best way forward to ensure you equipped the students with practical skills.
Why is integrating vocational tracks early on so critical for building a sustainable future for African youth?
In my perspective, I strongly believe that introducing vocational and technical education, it is called Tech Voc early in critical stage, because it actually directs, connect learning to life and livelihood, right? So, in our country, Sierra Leone, as in many parts of Africa, we have a great population, but limited formal job opportunities. If our educational system continues to focus mainly on theory rather than practical, we will keep producing graduates who are qualified on paper, but struggle to survive economically. We are actually experiencing these problems. Therefore, if we introduce early vocational training, it gives young people practical skills which they can use immediately, whether in agriculture, construction, ICT, or tailoring, mechanics, or even in doing trades, right? These are skills that are not only creating jobs, but also enable the young people to start small businesses and support their families and communities. It also helps students identify their talents at an early stage, instead of waiting until after graduation to discover what they are good at. I also consider education to be not to be a one-size-fits-all at all. It should reflect different abilities and pathways. Many times we see education as something we just pass through quickly and have our papers and then we go out to find a job. But most importantly, we must change the perception that vocational education is a second option, because this is the perspective most people have. The moment they saw you in technical and vocational institutions, they say, oh, well, she's a dropout or he's a dropout. But in reality, it is a primary driver of economic growth and resilience. You see many countries that have successfully developed have invested heavily in both academic and technical education, right? So for me, integrating vocational learning early is about building an educational system that prepares young people not just to pass exams, but to build sustainable lives and contribute meaningfully to national development.
People who create are people who build. Tradespeople build cities, tradespeople build communities. If we harken back to the time before the West brought formal education to us, every kingdom, every tribe had a predominant skill or trade that they were involved in. The Yoruba people had tie and dye, they did commerce. The Benin people had bronze. The Tiv people had farming. They were also warriors. So we each had these skills that everybody you were born into it, you were expected to learn it, but if you find that you can't learn it, then they look for alternatives for you. And I believe that's what we should still do today. You figure out what the child's skill is early. What is their proclivity? What do they enjoy doing? I'm not discrediting formal education. Every child should go to school. Every child should have the ability to read and to be able to do basic arithmetic. I understand that. But if a child decides that if she enjoys cooking and she wants to be a chef, she shouldn't be discouraged. The parents shouldn't tell her, no, you must be a lawyer or you must be a doctor. If she has the passion to be a chef or a designer or even woodworking, encourage it. That's my belief anyway. But I don't know. It's easy to say, but if my daughter comes to me and says she wants to be a woodworker, I don't know how I'm going to react to that. I digress. Anyway, Ms. Akintayo, how can traditional schools destigmatize vocational and hands-on technical skills so that parents and students view them as premium career pathways rather than backup plans?
Well, I think in the last 10 or 20 years, there's a gradual shift. Yes, into vocational and skill building. You see someone who read medicine in the university and is a baker. So it's just that it's taking a longer time. They are not developing it earlier so that the children will. But I think now it's getting, because I see children, doing beadworking and they are making money. I see them doing content and they are making money. So I think there's a gradual shift back into those things that are skills that people can actually use and become job creators, like you said. So but it's not early enough. A lot of people is when the parents will say, when you finish your degree, you can go and be a woodworker.
Whatever you want to be.
You can do, but you must have that first degree. So I think it's gradually shifting, but it may take us a little bit longer because we still have this belief that unless you have a first degree, you are not good enough. You can't be productive. But I think early enough, we should introduce, like what the government is just doing now in Nigeria. We have so many skills that they've introduced from primary school now. Yes, we have video, whatever, different types of careers, skills that are now subject. But my fear is, these things we tend to theorize things than the practical. Okay, you say we should give children GSM repairs. That's a subject now. GSM repairs and computer. Yes. Now, you say, where will I get the teacher? So we have the right concept, but we are not doing it in the right way. So I'm afraid that we may still revert back to what we used to do. So that's the disconnect of the academics and vocational training. We still believe that it's those people who are not doing well that we take to the vocational schools. Yeah, you are not academically all right, then go to, it's an option. Like he said, we make it an option B. It's not supposed to be so. They're supposed to take the two along so that the children will be job creators and innovators by themselves.
Sorry, just a follow-on question. Okay, first of all, I'm happy to hear that we're now moving towards skill acquisitions from early stages. So when they say you should, school administrators should, is it now up to school administrators to fund the teaching of those subjects, or does the government subsidize? Do they help you pay for the teachers who are going to come and teach those subjects?
That is not on the ground for now, and so there's an issue. You say we should do knitting, and I have to go and source for the person who will do the knitting. How many people are doing knitting around? So government is not funding these aspects. They assume and they expect that the schools should go ahead and solve the problem. And that is why there's usually a disconnect with legislation and schools. When government, implementation, when government wants to implement a particular thing, it's not supposed to be rushed. If we want to get it right, it has to take some time for us to integrate into it. For example, this year, I know that some children are writing WAEC on some of these subjects. They've not
learned anything really.
It becomes a water in, water out. It doesn't really hold any effect. So the government should always bring together, every strata of the educational system. Everyone is going to be involved. And I don't think government should drive this. It should be the educators, the owners of schools. We can create forum to discuss these issues, get the necessary data that we need for legislation to go forward. Because government wants to see the data. How is it going to affect economics? How is it going to affect job creation?
Maybe that would now encourage them to fund it.
Maybe.
So when educators create brilliant local models, they often hit a wall with rigid policy frameworks. How do we convince policymakers and governments to adopt and support these homegrown innovations through legislation?
That's why I say we need to discuss. We need to create the forum ourselves, educators. We shouldn't wait for government. We should create a forum where we discuss and give the government appropriate data so that they can work on that to bring the legislation that can help us.
Okay. Mr. Darlington, would you like to add to that point or buttress it?
Sure. Thank you. In our own context in Sierra Leone, one of the biggest realities we face has to do with many strong education innovations which remain at pilot level, because the policy environment is still quite rigid and slow, very slow to adapt. But there are many reasons for that. Now, to convince policymakers to adopt homegrown innovations, I think the first thing that is most important is government is to get the understanding that government does not scale ideas. They don't, because they are popular. It scales them because they work. It is not that the ideas are popular, so we have to scale them. For example, in Sierra Leone, I think in 2018, the current president, His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, brought in the free quality education program. This program has actually gained a strong national support, partly because it showed clear improvement in access. Now you have more children going to school, especially from low-income communities. We are able to return out of school girls. We are able to return back to school and stay enrolled. But there are still challenges, right? Quite recently, we conducted a survey to see how we can support out-of-school girls. And the findings of that survey, it was quite interesting, because some of these out-of-school girls, they will tell you their parents are not able to afford uniforms, footwear, bags, because the free quality education only focus on providing materials, educational materials, and take care of the fees, right? So the same principle applies to grassroots innovations. If for instance, a vocational training model is introduced by an NGO in Kenema district where we are working, for example, it shows that young people are gaining practical skills, starting small enterprise or reducing dropout rates. Then that data becomes a powerful tool for influencing policy. We don't need to wait for government. Secondly, we need to create structured pathways for innovation. within the system, right? Within the system, we need to wait for that, rather than having isolated projects in different schools, right? Right. Our ministry, the ministry responsible for education, for basic education in this country, have established a formal pilot or innovation in schools, where you have new teaching methods, digital tools, or vocational models, which are tested. But the honest truth is, we don't have the infrastructure. We do not. The third thing I want to touch on has to do with the engagement, which I consider is very important. In Sierra Leone, we have seen through the educational sector plan, which is 2022 to 2026, that when government, development partners, and civil society work together, reforms become more realistic and sustainable, rather than government just taking the whole mantle of leadership to do everything. Policymakers are more likely to adopt innovations when they are involved early, rather than being presented with finished solutions. So it's something that has to be collaborative. Ultimately, the goal here is not just to create successful local models, but we have to look at how we build trust. We have to generate the evidence, data, which will lead us to create systems that allow those models to be absorbed into national policy. That is how innovation moves, from isolated success stories to real system-wide transformation to benefit children across the country. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I see that even across countries, we are basically saying the same things. We need to establish the systems, establish forums for collaboration, come up with how best to solve these problems, and then provide the legislatures with the data that this is how we propose these problems can be solved. We have implemented it, we have started it. This is the data we have so far. We believe that with your support, this can be bigger and better, essentially. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Darlington, as a final question, as a previous Frontiers grantee, how important would you say is regional collaboration between Nigeria and Sierra Leone in building a united front for African educational reform?
You can see other countries have so much strength in TVET, technology and integration and teacher development. Also, what is more important these days, you see digital education on the rise, and Sierra Leone is making progress at the policy level. But implementation in schools remains uneven and faces significant challenges because of the infrastructure. You can go to some communities, they have their classes under the tree, honestly. So how can you talk about digital policy? You know, when African countries learn from one another, we accelerate progress while ensuring solutions remain contextually relevant, right? Therefore, the future of African education will be built through collaboration rather than isolation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, final thoughts. If you could change just one thing about your country's national education system by tomorrow morning, what would it be?
It will be to make practical, skill-based learning a core part of every student's journey, from the beginning to the end of school, right? This is because too many students graduate with certificates, but without practical skills, abilities needed to solve real problems or even create livelihoods. So By integrating agriculture, entrepreneurship, digital literacy, technical skills, and community-based projects into learning, we will definitely ensure that education prepares learners, not just for exams, but for life, right? And ultimately, the real success of education should be measured by how well it transforms lives and equips young people to contribute meaningfully to their communities and economies. When we are in the university, we are taught how to solve a whole length of equation, dy, dx, etc., etc. But in the real life, what are we seeing? We don't need all those calculations now. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Mommy Titi, final thoughts. If you could change just one thing about our country's national education system, what would it be?
Is to make, de-emphasize exams and scores. Wow. And like he said, let it be on the same par with skills development. We focus too much on what's your grade, or the exams. And unfortunately, it affects a lot of other things. That is why you see people cheat during exam, because the curriculum is too vast. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, how did we pass through those stages in our lives? And I remember that when I was growing up, during the holidays, our parents would put us in a skill learning environment where you go and learn something. As I remember, I can sew, I'm a good baker, I can, so many things that parents. So if I have to change it, bring down the scores, the emphasis on scores, and encourage parents to put their children in skill learning environments where they can do better and understand that the only thing that can make money, because everybody is rushing to make money, the only thing that can make money for you are the skills, what you can use your hand to do. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Ma. I like that comment, decentralized scores. When we were in school, we learned a lot of useless things, as far as I'm concerned, because more than half of what I learned in school, I don't use them. I don't remember most of it. People who learned calculus in school, how many of them are using it in daily life, So I like the let's centralize skills acquisition and vocational training. We need more of those. And the measure of education is, does it make you a happy person? Does it make you a fulfilled person? Can you take care of yourself, your family, and your community with what you have learned in school? Yeah. That is the true measure of education, not what did you graduate with. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining us and for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and joining us, Mr. Darlington. It was a pleasure and an honor to have you both with us today. I hope we can do this again some other time, because education reform in our countries require ongoing conversations and collaborations. Our systems need to work together. For now, we are all working in silos. The policymakers are making policies that do not translate to on the ground and grassroots movements and vice versa. So we need more conversations around this. We need more collaboration. We need more partnerships. So I hope we can do this again another time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Bye.